Welcome everyone to another Boat Live event. Today we're going to be discussing overcoming the barriers of racism and culture. My name is Jordan on behalf of Microsoft presenting this event, and our host is going to be Josh Hunt. I'm going to hand it over to him and then answer the question for the panelists. So go ahead, Josh.
So we're going to go ahead and go ladies first. So we're going to go with Neha. She is a human rights entrepreneur and a recent SMU graduate with degrees in human rights and marketing and minors in advertising and nonprofit studies. Neha is the founder and CEO of Just Drive. It is an app that rewards undistracted driving that she created after she was rear-ended by driving while texting, or by a driver that was texting. I'm sorry. In 2017, she pitched her company at South by Southwest after winning the Red Bull Launch Institute competition. After South by Southwest, Neha's story has picked up by the news stations such as NBC, CBS, and Carrollton Leader, Dallas Innovates, and Dallas Morning News. Neha recently gave TEDx talk on the importance of creating your own personal brand and was named one of her campus's 22 under 22 most inspiring college women and poets and Poet Quant's best and brightest business majors of 2019. Super dope. David Moore we have next. After his started career as a prosecutor, David has become one of the most decorated attorneys in America, consistently being recognized as a rising star by Super Lawyers, top 10 attorneys, top 10 attorneys under 40, top 40 under 40 Black attorneys, among other awards. David has leveraged his immense legal background into success into the sports and business fields. David is a partner at a law office of Spar and Bernstein, executive vice president of, am I saying this right? Say SHA Group, and co-founded of Abundance. Next, we have in the top left corner, a guy, John Clash. He's from Yonkers, New York, owner of two companies, God Entrepreneur LLC and Travel Entrepreneur LLC. Winner of 2 Underground Music Awards, participated in building 4 schools in Guatemala and spoke on stages in front of thousands of people. And we have David Chen, bottom left corner. David Chen is managing partner at GTIF Capital and former Deloitte partner. I looked this up on YouTube on how to say it. It says like people never could say this right.
That's Deloitte.
Okay, there you go. Deloitte partner for 10 years, where he worked at the largest Fortune 500 Asian companies for Deloitte, where he led China services and Korean services groups, where he became one of the youngest partners at the age 34. David has taken his experiences and applied into his ventures into esports, technology, real estate, and blockchain industries. David sits on several advisory boards and is an investor partner, including FaZe Clan, GTIF Capital, and North American Collegiate League, a collegiate esports and entertainment nonprofit organization, and has helped them develop business strategy. Lastly, we have Nadim. He is the owner of the beautiful co-working space, which he's in right now, Venture X, Dallas, is by the Dallas Galleria Mall. He is a magna cum laude from Purdue University, electrical engineering and MBA. The background in product development, he excels at understanding the customer needs and developing products and businesses. Our solution. I ended with that on purpose, that our solutions. That's exactly what we're going to be focusing on today. So let's just go ahead and jump into the conversation, overcoming the barrier of racism within culture. I know you guys seen this in your emails. One of my favorite quotes is, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Let's start off with this, guys. This flow, just let it flow. Whoever wants to chime in, feel free to chime in. No specific. We're just going to be having a conversation. But the first question I have is, what would you tell someone that doesn't believe change is needed? Yeah, I wanted to start off with the icebreaker. They're set the tone for the whole entire event. Like, there are going to be questions that, they're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be one for the books, guys. So what would you tell someone who doesn't.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go
I mean, one, I think if you're saying that, then you're probably sitting in a privileged position to be able to say something like that. The other, I mean, I think there's always change needed. I mean, as human nature is not, we can't be stagnant, right? I mean, we're always going to improve. I mean, America being the best country, we still can make it better. So there's always change that's going to be needed. So that's my point of view.
Yeah.
I would, if somebody was to say something like that, as far as like they see that there's no need for change, I would ask them. I wouldn't tell them anything. I would ask them, how have you come to that conclusion? You know, because if I just give you off the back, if you're saying something like that, that means that there is a whole lot of information you don't have. So if you don't have the information, I need to find out what the information is that you do not have, so I can help guide you into seeing why the need for change exists. If I just come at you and be like, what are you talking about? There's a need for change. Don't you see this? Don't you see? People aren't going to be receptive to that. So I always look at every situation of asking questions to get the answers that I need, so I can lead people to the truth, and even if they're not going to see things my way, as long as their interaction with me was in love and in understanding, that's a seed that is now planted. It may not sprout right away, but it's a seed that's planted that, maybe later they'll bump into somebody else who says something into them that waters the seed, or they watch a video, or they get on a panel like this and they watch this, and it plants a seed. Anybody who says that just obviously doesn't have the correct information or enough information to be making claims like that. So that's what I would do. I would just ask a question.
I would piggyback off of that a little bit and say that anyone that can say a comment like that at this time is willfully ignorant, right? I think the information is more than apparent. It's obvious. I would also take the educational route and take them back to my career as a prosecutor and have them sit in the courthouse for a day and see the people that come through the courthouse doors and what they look like, and see how they're treated. Go to any big city in America and just see some of the disparities in terms of demographics or actual systemic discrimination, and also strategic discrimination. For example, like the city of Chicago, right? We all know that the train tracks that ran through it was designed to keep the minorities in one section of town. And we've got the north side and the south side, and there's no trauma centers on the south side. So while it's shown on the media that we've got a number of, Black men dying in Chicago because of gun violence, what's not told is the fact that a lot of them are dying as they can't get to an actual adequate trauma center if and when they're hurt. So that's one thing I would do. It's all about education, right? And if the people that are going to be willfully ignorant, no matter what we say, they probably still will be willfully ignorant. But if we can touch, 2, 3, 5% of that group, we're still making a difference.
And I think that if they don't see a need for change, maybe we can show them the benefit of change. If they don't think it's necessary, there are so many things in life that weren't necessary to have change. Even if you think of technology, and if you, for example, the example of a car, people were getting around just fine on horses. Happen has benefited the society in so many ways. So I think even if you show them the perspective of the benefit of change versus the necessity of change, that can change people's perspectives as well.
I mean, for me, I think growing up in different places and coming from a different country and being in this amazing country, I can tell you that I think, coming from a different country and working in different countries and growing up in different places, you have to understand that this is a global issue. It's not a today issue. People are going to hate other people and not like other people because it's easier to be selfish and be on top as opposed to working with people and try to bring them on top. And a lot of times that's a big issue. And I think for us to want to break this ignorance, that's the big word I want to use, and the ignorance for change, to John's point and everyone else's points here, we have to explain it the best that we can. And to David's point, if we can't explain it at that point, they don't feel in their hearts that they're just not the right people to talk to, right? I mean, you don't argue with a fool, as we often hear about it. What I've realized in my life and everything else when it comes to change is most people just don't know. And it's silly for us to assume that they don't know, and it's how can you not know and go from there. They don't have the position, they don't understand it. They just don't. And we have to be the voice. We have to be the reason. We have to be the proof in the pudding on why we can make a change. And like David's point earlier, if 3 or 5% of people change, then we've done our jobs, right? So it is very easy to sit there and say, what do you mean you don't know how to change things? But most of the times people, they don't know better. And that's what we're here to try to help do.
Yeah, if I could just jump in again really, really quick, because you touched on something really important there, Dave. 3 to 5% of people change. If you change their mindset and they then go and influence 3 to 5% more of their actual group, their demographic. And now it's not just coming from somebody that's in an oppressed group that's telling them what you're doing is wrong. It's coming from one of their peers or colleagues whose opinion they may respect a little bit more. They may be able to convert 10%. Right now you have 10% more, and it just exponentially grows from there.
I like that. All right. How is race made, determined, and constructed?
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. How is race made, determined, and constructed? Yeah, coming with those 1, 2s.
Let me just clarify the question. You're,
Yeah.
you're asking how is race made?
Yeah, determined or constructed.
So made, determined, or constructed. Like how are we separated? Like systematically, like we're just separated.
Yeah, like who like how does that, like when I say that, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It doesn't have, there's no like right or wrong answer with this. Just like what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say how is race made, determined, and constructed?
I would say that it's that it was looked at as an opportunity to keep people divided, because if you're in power, you cannot the only way that countries get taken over is if the people unite, right? Like prime example of, when America, the Revolutionary War, the only reason that they won, the odds were way against them. Like, you're gonna fight Britain with sticks and stuff? Like, you guys, you're gonna fight Britain? And they won because they banded together. They were the United States of America, and I believe that it's just planned. If you are running the world, why wouldn't you? Why would you not keep everybody divided? It's good for money, it's good for power, it's good for all of that stuff. If you're that, if you're the people in charge, that's how I believe that it's created. I believe it's like, all right, cool. These people look different. Let's pin them against each other. Let's use that and pin them against each other. So that way, and you know what? Let's also get them to fight each other too. Let's get them to, if you're a Democrat or Republican, let's get those guys to fight too. Let's get them to fight too. And it's just, it's just systematic. Here comes the word systematic. You could systematic racism, systematic fill in the blank. Everything is a system. This world is a business. The people at the top are here to make money. They're here to live well. And if they can do that at the expense of others and keep prolonging their position, then why not use race as one of the ways to do it? Why not?
So my point of view on this is, I think we as human always want to be like others, right? Like we want to connect, we want to try to be or imitate. So regardless if there was black, white, brown, we would always find ways. I mean, why is it that we are always trying to be like someone? Just be okay with being different, right? I mean, we're always going to have some differences. If we were all white, we would be like, okay, there's the red hair people and then there's the blue eye people. And then there's, if we're all, we were all the same color, same eyes, then we would be like, okay, there's people who are engineers, who are lawyers. We'll find differences, someone's hair is this way or something. We'll find ways to group people, and we would always have, like, these people are that, let me unite with these people because they're red hair, or let me unite with these people because they're this height or this sex or whatever, or black hair or whatever. So I think there'll always be differences. We just have to be accepting of those differences and be unique and not try to be like other people, not be the next Steve Jobs, because we're talking about entrepreneurships, or Warren Buffett, or be anyone but yourself. And it's okay, like me, or be anyone else, like mix of black and white, or mix of thousands of other religion and sex and countries. So I think we just have to accept the fact that we are different, and it's okay to be different.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're really good. I think we're kind of straying away from the question a little bit. So the question is, what is? Could you repeat the question one more time?
How is race made, determined, and constructed?
I mean, I think if we go to the root of what caused racism in America, and even further, if we want to talk about the revolution, I think it came down to white supremacy and colonialism. That's truly where it began and what started these problems, right? We came to another place that was called ours, and because people looked different than us, we assumed that they were, I'm saying we, but white people assumed that they were different than them because they were, or inferior to them because they were of different color. And that's what led to racism, is white supremacy, essentially.
Yeah, I would just say that race historically has been a social construct created to further the agenda of those in power. If we look historically throughout time, throughout different cultures, from caste systems to saying someone's untouchable based on the way that they look, that's something that's been done historically in all societies to further the agendas of those in power. Here in America, obviously, we know that the Native Americans were here prior to the European settlers coming. Well, they used, what made them different to kind of control and further the agenda, further the narrative that the Native Americans who were resourceful and built communities and civilizations, that they were dumb and that they were savages, and they perpetuated that stereotype to invoke fear and to control them. And that's unfortunately how it's been used, not just through race, but it's been used in religion. It's been used in a number of different social constructs to further the agenda of those that are in power. And if we stay on task in terms of why we are all here, I think one of the things that we need to actually truly promote to help bridge that gap and help fix that issue, it's going to be our generation. Obviously, everybody here knows that, right? Yeah. It's what America says it is, right? It's what New York City says it is. We're a melting pot. All the things that make us different is what makes us great, strong, and unique. The more we promote that message, the more those, negative social constructs that are attached to each and every subgroup of quote unquote minorities, the more we're going to grow and actually move forward.
Okay. That was really good, Dave. It's going to be hard to talk about that one afterwards. You got my caste system one, but I'll tell you this in this way. It's a simple form of classification. And it doesn't matter what country we come from or what country we all live in, it's a classification. We do it here in the United States, right? After we break down the race and everything else, the Constitution says all men are created equal. And the first thing people ask you is Democrat or Republican. And when you vote on the tickets, you can't vote for someone that's on a Democratic ticket if you're a Republican. So we're already breaking down the social construct, male and female, right? That's what we're breaking down. And the reality of the situation is simple. It's a classification, what a thing is, and when we're doing that type of stuff, Northerners talk badly about Southerners. And in your own cities, I'm from this side of town, you're from that side of town. It is a consistent classification of breaking it down. It's not just a racial issue. We do it with people who are poor, who are rich, people who are educated, and people who aren't educated. We do have everything. And I think what we have to realize is we do it to classify so we can relate and not relate to people. Shoot, half my friends who are Raider fans hate all my friends who are 49ers fans. The reality is they have to have that classification. The real impact is understanding that there is a classification and realizing how to, again, not be ignorant and teach, I think, people that we're actually almost the same. But if you go to any other place in this world, I will tell you for a fact that people are racist against their own people, right? Different areas. I mean, you brought the caste system. I worked in Mexico. I can tell you for a fact that people in central Mexico don't like the people in northern Mexico, vice versa. So, I think we have to understand that it was made and determined and constructed, like they said, for the higher power, the higher beings, the people that can win. And they want to put you in a construct because that was the way to control you because you don't feel good about yourself. Because if you're classified as fat, you feel fat. And you're classified as fit, you feel fit and you feel better about yourself. This is a constant issue in our lives. We have to just really understand that. And then if we don't believe it, we just don't believe it. And that's the reality of the situation.
What do you, I was talking about race, and you said this is the generation, Dave, you said this is the generation that's going to change it. What do young people, or we could even classify it as millennials, Generation Z, what do you think that young people understand about race that the older generation doesn't understand?
I think a lot of that starts with just access, right? Our generation has a lot more access to be independently educated. I think I have it behind me somewhere here. It lies. My 7th grade teacher told me, right? The things that you're not told or taught in your history classes growing up. I think our generation growing up in the age of the digital age of the media, the internet, YouTube, we can all find out what true stories happen. And I think that helps shape who we are. And I also think the fact that a lot more of, quote unquote, the minorities in this country in our generation are college educated and graduate school level educated than, our parents and grandparents have been, right? Because those are situations as you go through the echelon, and we've all been there, maybe in your high school, you as a minority look like the majority of the people in your high school, maybe, right? Then when you go to college, you're probably a minority. Then you get on to grad school, you're even more of a minority. But each and every level we go on, we're relating to people, and people, are seeing and learning about one another in a way and mixing in a way that maybe in the 1940s and 50s when, if you were a Japanese laborer, you were building the railroad, a Chinese laborer, you were building a railroad on the West Coast. And that's pretty much what you did. And you stayed in that group. Or if you were a migrant Mexican worker, you were working on farms. You weren't interacting with, an Italian girl or a Polish Jew in a classroom and having a discussion just like this. So that's one of the things I think that our generation, obviously just based on time and when we came about, between the digital age and us having a higher percentage of minority educated people, is going to change how we think.
Go ahead.
Oh, all right, cool. So, I'm in full agreement with everything that you're saying, David. Me growing up, I believe that it starts with us as individuals. I believe that it doesn't matter what laws government passes. I think that there are laws they can pass that will help. It doesn't matter what groups, like all of that stuff is great. But what it really comes down to is us as individuals. And in my family, like race was, if you even thought about saying anything racist in my family, it was over for you. Absolutely over. My father didn't grow up like that. My father was internal affairs in police department, so he was arresting bad cops. It was so crazy for us when we were growing up because we're in Yonkers. At the time, it was one of the most corrupt police forces that was there with the mafia and everything. I remember they
There's a show about that.
Yeah,
Show Me a Hero. It's a good show.
Yep, exactly. My father was internal affairs in that mess, and my stepmother, who's a civil rights attorney for 20 years, sued the government so bad that they tapped our phones. Growing up in that environment, me, my brothers, my sister is Chinese, adopted from China. All of our friends it's like I have a colorful array of friends. And I believe that it starts as us as individuals and people who are not usually connecting with people who do not look like them to make the effort to just go eat at a restaurant from people who don't look like you. Go to travel. Travel is so important when you connect with people who don't look like you, and then you realize how similar we all are when it comes to the things that we want out of life. We want love, we want compassion, we want to feel wanted, we want to feel important. These are basic human things that we all want to feel. And I believe that, my family and my friends are the way that they are simply because we grew up in a culture, in an environment where we noticed the differences in people, but those differences didn't divide us. It made us interested in each other. And it's, I believe, you're saying that our generation is going to be the ones to change it. I believe so because we are going to grow our children up to have a colorful group of friends as well. And our children are the ones who grow up to become the leaders. They grow up to become the government officials. They're the ones who put in the laws. They're the ones who, our children will create the culture that comes out of these discussions that we're having right now and these walls that we're breaking down. So I'm in complete agreement with you on our generation being the ones to do it. And I hope I'm alive to see like the impact. I hope I'm like a grandfather or something like that, and I'm seeing a world of people just connecting in a way that our grandparents weren't able to see. I hope I'm alive for it, but even if I'm not, I believe that our generation is the one who's going to change it.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I want Neha to weigh in if you can. If I'm saying your name or butchering your name, please correct me. Okay, great. I would love for you to weigh in. Just, I know you're a recent graduate from SMU. What do you feel like is the biggest difference between you and the older generation? Like, I guess the way you see the world.
I think it's education, like someone else mentioned. I think education is super duper important. I graduated from the Human Rights Program, and that program didn't even exist 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I think that we're valuing changing people's world's views more. And I think that is definitely a part that plays the largest role in what makes people appreciate difference, right? Is education and understanding what difference looks like. And I think that we're pushing back a lot more too. We're not sticking with the status quo. We're not saying okay to the beliefs that have been passed down. We're really pushing back on these issues, and we're recognizing what is a microaggression. We're recognizing like what are these things that we are doing inherently that has been just shoveled into us through society and systemic racism that we can change, right? We're actively looking and seeking for change and making that difference through education.
Okay, here's the reverse question. I want to hear this really quick. We don't need everyone to answer this, but what do older people understand about race that younger people don't?
If I can jump on that one.
You calling yourself old, David?
A little bit older, but Asian no reason. But here's what I'm trying to get at. Edit that out. But my point is that I mean, it's very easy. If we're trying to fix a problem, we have to understand the other side of the argument. We do this every single day in our lives when we do sales, when we do business. And it's so easy as our generation to be angry at the older generation. What we tend to forget is if we were the older generation, if we were the exact same people in those situations, we would not be as enlightened as we are now. We would not be as cultured as we are now, because globalism and business has forced people to be together. Technology like this allows us to talk to each other. People moving to each other from other parts of the world to have better lives in different parts of countries, refugees, have allowed us to do so. Human nature and compassion has gotten better. And that's just the reality of the situation. But when you talk about an older generation that didn't know any better, we are doing the same thing as we're judging them. We need to educate them. I've sat in plenty of tables with an older generation where the Chinese hate the Japanese and the Japanese hate the Koreans. And I've been called racial words because they didn't know any better. And that's the reality of it. Now, I can very easily get up and get upset and sulk, or I can teach and educate. It's that simple, right? We're so hot to trot because we think that other people should know our positions, when the reality is they don't. And it's very hard for someone, and I want to use a simple example. When you go to school, your parents' word is everything when you first start going to school. Then you start changing because now you're listening to your friends as in elementary school. As you get older, you start changing, and the things that you were taught from your parents has completely shifted. And then when you get to college on your own, you're not that person. You're not, mom and dad's word is not mom and dad's word anymore. Mom and dad's word is now compared to your experience in life. From that point on, when you marry your significant other, They have a position, you have a position. Who's right and who's wrong? I can't say that my fiance's mother is wrong for washing dishes this way, but my mother is right. That's the constant issue. It has to be the discussion to understand, because you have to realize that one person isn't above the other, that you have to work together to find what your family is, what your culture is, what your rules are. Now that social media is becoming the way it is, and we're more enlightened, or on movies. Look, Crazy Rich Asians came out 2 years ago. There were literally no Asian movies before that for 20 years. I don't care, because in Asia, there's plenty of Asian movies. The reality is, I want to make it better, so I'm going to make an impact. And if I'm going to make an impact, I'm going to do it right. And so I think a lot of people understand that the older generation doesn't know better. And let me tell you something, you're not going to sit there by beating and getting mad and getting angry at them if they don't know better, because we don't do it to children who don't know better. They have the same amount of education as a child. They don't see other people. Let's educate them and make it better and go from there.
Okay, great. Let's follow up with that question with that. So the older generation, we know that they need to be educated. We know that they lack awareness. How do we implement that education into systemic, systemic corporations that have things in place and have had things in place for years before they were even there? How do we implement change in that space?
So I'll say a comment real quick. I think what we're doing now, kind of by saying that the older generation are not knowing better, it kind of goes back to my earlier point of, again, we're kind of like putting ourselves as one group and putting them as a separate group. And if you look at it the opposite way, I mean, this is a form of racism, whatever you want to call it, right? We're saying they don't know any better. Don't worry about them, but they've been through, MLK, they've been through slavery or whatever, or they've been through world wars. There are reasons they are the way they are. If we, and the reverse side of that, from their point of view, we are just filled with junk information of like who's eating what, who is, doing what on Facebook and Snapchat. I mean, there's perspectives of it, so we need to keep an open mind that they do know a lot of stuff that we don't know. And same thing with whites and blacks. We can't say that, that one is racist. If you're saying that whites are racist, that's a racist comment on its own, because you're saying that certain type of people or cops are bad. That's also a bad comment, saying that you're putting all these people as one, saying that they're all bad. That's not how it works, right? I mean, if this was a Black America, maybe blacks would be racist against white. That's controversial part of it, but I think all races can't be judged, or all ages can't be judged by one group. We can't group, basically, is the conclusion of that.
Yeah. So
inherently are missing so racism cannot exist without power and privilege. Like the whole premise of race, like black people could not be racist because they didn't experience I don't know how to explain this succinctly. Okay, so when people say, oh, that's a racist comment towards white people, that can't exist because white people come with the power and privilege in that situation. So inherently, white people cannot be a victim of racism because they come with that power and privilege. Similarly, with the all cops statement that you made, it's not cops as people, it's the police system, right? So it's not individual cops making the actions that we are targeting, but we're talking about the police system as a whole. So when people say, oh, like all cops suck, it's not really the cops that suck, it's the system.
yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm glad you said that, Neha. That's something, obviously I believe in, and coming, I wrote my thesis on what shapes the public opinion of police, and it's not, the individual cops that join, but it's like systemic practices in terms of the teaching. It's the blue code of silence when somebody, breaks out of, what the police or agenda, that they're going to be punished. But back to Josh's question, in terms of the older generation and what practices we can put in place to help shift and change their minds. in terms of systemic procedures in the corporate workplace, if you put a policy that you can't discriminate against somebody because, you know, they're black or because they're gay or because they're Latino or whatever, that's not going to change anything. That's going to be shifted and rooted in, okay, I'm going to just not do this at work so that I can keep my job. I think what John said earlier, and I think you said it as well, Josh, it starts at home. And I think it's happening as an unintended consequence of who we are as a generation, right? We're all mixing up, right? I think, you know, until you can truly break bread with somebody, get to know someone from another culture, truly learn who they are, you're going to still carry and keep the same biases that you might have perceived of someone until you do that, right? So just putting in procedures to just, you know, slap somebody on the wrist because to protect folks, that's not going to change the way people think. And the other thing I was going to say is we're creating, you know, a real true melting pot in terms of our generation. You know, my fiance is Indian. You know, that was, you know, not a taboo thing in her family. You know, her family loves me. They accepted me in open arms. I know traditionally, you know, there's a stigma or stereotype that may not have been something that, you know, most Indian families would have been open to. But guess what? Now that family is going to have a mixed race grandchild. I mean, my dad is Puerto Rican. My mom is black. So even though I have aunts and uncles on both sides of my families that may have had a negative stereotype about either race, that is now changed because it affects their actual family, right? So I think it's going to happen a little bit naturally and, you know, through some forced education. But in terms of systemic practices at the workplace, it doesn't really change anything. It starts at home.
All right, so yeah, we talked about a little bit. Neha just touched on it. Police brutality. I want to read a quote from Cole Hughes, and he brought up some facts that he researched from Rolling Fire, got from Rolling Fire. So in 2019, 41 unarmed Americans were killed by cops. 9 of those were black. 19 of those were killed. 19 of those of the 41 were white, and that's a little bit over 25%. And black people make up 14% of the population, so that's not a huge disparity. So I quote: "What is your take on that? Being that only 9 people, 9 black people were killed last year alone. What would be your take on, I guess, the police brutality? Because that would be that is their, you know, like that is their scapegoat. That's what they're like. That's the card that they're playing. They're like, well, I mean, more white people was being killed than black people. However, you know, we know that, you know, black people are more likely to, what they say, get roughened up in a normal traffic stop than a white person. However, they weren't killed as much white people last year. What have you guys' take on that?
So I missed some of the stats. You said only 9 black were killed last year.
Yeah, correct. Unarmed.
Where are you getting that stat from?
This is from Cole Hughes, and he got this stat from Rolling Fire, and I can send you the link on YouTube. It was a link on YouTube where he was being interviewed, and I don't know if you know who Cole Hughes is, but he's a gentleman who's kind of, he's a Democrat, but he likes to play devil's advocate when it comes to racism. And I found that stat very, fascinating, and I necessarily couldn't find like that information in Rolling Fire, which is what he quoted. But he is very notable and well documented. So I just want to see you guys' thoughts on that word. And if David, you have some different stuff, I'd love to hear those too as well.
Yeah, I'm not certain if that's accurate, if I'm being brutally honest. I think one thing that is accurate and where the conversation should go, if we're going to shift to police practices in this country and murdering of civilians, we can start with the fact that America outpaces every other first world country by about 10,000%, whether black, white, Latino, or Asian, in terms of the deaths of civilians at the hands of police. I think where the issue is going to be in training practices on how to respond, and also the fact the gun laws in this country. And I know we've got some of our buddies down in the South, and I'm here in New York, and the gun laws are really strict here. And not so strict there. I think there's a direct correlation between the prevalence of guns in this country and the fact that police officers feel that if they enter into a scenario, there may or may not be a gun in the equation. I think that plays a huge role in things. But ultimately, it goes back to the fact that it's a mob mentality in terms of how people police. There's a number of police officers that lack training. The stats that I've seen over the last few weeks are, beauticians, electricians, social workers, barbers, all require more hours of training than police. And police are folks that are armed with a lethal weapon that can take life at any point. That's the main issue, right? There's not enough education required, and there's definitely not enough training required in terms of vetting out who should be able to hold, what should be an important role in society.
And then go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted you to follow up, David, with what would you suggest in a police reform in your city?
Yeah, I mean, I've tackled this issue a number of different times. A lot of people suggest community policing. So if the demographic of your community is 50% white and 50% black, then you should have 50% white officers, 50% black officers. I get that in theory, right? But then when you put it in practice, the reason why it doesn't work is because you can have the most liberal or the most conservative person entering into the force, just like what David Chen said earlier. You start with your education at home, and as you go through, you start to be influenced by your outside surroundings. Once you get into that police academy, until the structure of the hierarchy changes, the actual commanding officers that set the tone for the rest of it, nothing is going to change. So I like the idea of community policing because it does help in this factor and this factor alone. If you've got, and I'm in New York City, I was a prosecutor in the Manhattan DA's office. A lot of our police force comes from South Jersey or Greenwich, Connecticut, some of these places where, they hadn't seen, and John's shaking his head because he knows what time it is. Some of these people haven't seen a minority until they literally came into the city to work. That was the first time ever encountering one. That is a huge freaking problem. One of my first cases as a prosecutor, and this is real life experience, my first week on the job, I had a kid that was 16 years old on the train in New York City, and he possessed what is called a gravity knife. A gravity knife is any knife that you can open like this by centrifugal force, right? Any knife that's pretty much a switchblade. He had it in his pocket. This kid was arrested and charged with possession of a weapon with the intent to harm someone, right? When I spoke to the kid, I did a proffer with him right when he was arrested. I asked him why he had the knife. He said, well, the last 3 times I came home from basketball practice in the Bronx, I lived down in Coney Island, I was robbed. I went home without my shoes the last time. The cop that arrested him, he said, well, I arrested this kid because he's a black kid on a train at night. What if my sister or my mom was on that train? Right? So I had to sit there and educate this kid because he has no awareness of what a kid at 16 years old, this grown man probably has never even taken the train, right? When you're in New York City, it's a different style of growing up. If you can't relate to the people the community that you're policing, then how can you feel comfortable, secure, and confident when you're interacting with them? There has to be a level of relatability.
So to add to that, I think that's a great point. We talked about the 9 deaths last year, whether or not, regardless of the deaths. I mean, I know we're focusing on that because of George and all this other stuff, but I mean, racism starts way before that. I mean, someone doesn't have to die to notice the racism, right? I mean, when you treat a black person differently, I mean, I'm not black, and I know that a black person stopped by a cop is going to be treated worse than a white person stopped by a cop, right? So the moment they stop them and talk to them differently, that's racism, and we need to stop it there and not. I mean, yes, shooting is wrong, and we need to stop that, but we need to stop it way before that. Like, you shouldn't be talking or treating someone differently because of the way they are or they look. So we need to focus, go deeper and into how are you treating someone when you stop their car? How are you talking to them? Don't talk to them because as a, the superiority and things like that. So I think regardless of how many deaths, I mean, we know that certain people get treated more unfairly than others. So.
We can't hear you.
I think your volume. Oh no, your volume is still.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I said going back to that stat, I think I would be curious to know how that factors in when you take the population of white people in America versus the population of Black people in America, and see if that factors itself out with the 9 versus how the number was.
Right. I was actually thinking that. That's so great to have.
Like people per capita, not just.
Right.
Number.
Yeah. That's actually something that I touched on. I made this video called "Dear Fellow White People," and it was talking about, you know, the stuff that happened with George Floyd. It was literally a 2-minute video. I was just getting some things off my chest, and it's got like 50,000 views total between Instagram and Facebook. I had no idea this was going to happen, like no idea. But you know, one of the things that people like to do is they like to pull up stats and say, oh well, you know, there's more white people killed than you know, Black people, and there's more this and there's more that, and it's like, even if that is true, why does it matter to bring that up in a situation where a Black man was killed by a white officer? Like, we're talking about this incident that happened right here, right? So I truly believe that people just don't understand. Like, the video that I made stated that you know, because I watched all these white people on, and I'm not one of these people who has like white guilt, you know, like that you know, I'm not guilty for being white. I don't carry that with me or anything like that. I just grew up where I was exposed to so many different cultures. And one thing that I think that, you know, white people who are only surrounded by white people don't understand is the pain that Black America feels when something like this happens, a pain that me and other white people will never be able to feel in our whole entire lives. So when the outrage comes from it, it's not up to us to judge the response or judge the reaction to something like that, us as white people to judge that, because they're reacting to a pain, they're feeling a pain that we will never feel in our whole entire lives. So when you bring a white cop from Greenwich to go work in the city, they bring that misunderstanding with them into all of those situations. And they bring that culture of never being around people who don't look like them into those situations. And then all they have to do is attach the worst parts of the stereotypes that we all have. We all have stereotypes attached to our race. But what they do is they attach the worst parts of the stereotype of everybody that they encounter, and they bring that baggage with them into it. I truly believe there should be cultural training. You know, you need to learn the city that you're in. When my father was internal affairs, they blew up the commissioner's car, right? And I was so young when this happened. I didn't even know what was going on. Every single time we got in the car, my father would check the car for bombs. And I didn't know what he was doing. I would just sit there and watch him check the car. I'm like, oh, he's just checking the car to make sure it's good. I would go to my friend's house and we would get in the parents' car and they'd be like, yo, your dad's not going to check the car? And they're like, check it for what? I'm like, I don't know. My dad checks the car every time. It wasn't until I was older that they told me that, yeah, he was checking for bombs, you know? But that's what you're fighting against. You're fighting against a system that protects itself, fighting against a system that, you know, it's political. It's, you know, in any culture or any group of people that have, you know, a common bond, you try to protect the view, you try to protect the people in that group over an individual. You try to protect the what's the word I'm looking for? The reputation of that group. Think about any organized group. When somebody messes it up, they try to cover it up so that way it protects the group. And when you bring that mentality into something as powerful as a police force, that's when it's dangerous in any situation, but that's when it becomes really dangerous, because now you have that type of power, the power to take a life and the power to get away with it. So, yeah.
Hey, one thing, just so we're clear on the record, I'm reading from U.S. News and World Report. More than 1,000 unarmed people died as a result of police harm. This is from 2013 to 19. According to data from Mapping Police Violence, about a third of them were black. About 17% of the black people who died as a result of police harm were unarmed, a larger share than any other racial group, and about 1.3 times more than the average of 13%. And I don't know if you guys can see this graphic, but this is an important one. If we look at this graphic, the big tall line, that's actually Caucasians. The line right here, that's black people, and the line in the middle is Latinos. The light blue is armed, the dark blue is unarmed. So when we're looking at it statistically, the white people that are killed by police is generally in situations when they are armed, whereas minorities are getting killed in situations when they are unarmed. The greatest example of it is something that we all seen play out in real time. Not George Floyd, I'm talking about Dylan Roof, the guy that went into a church and opened fire, and they went and took him to get food, and they brought him and subdued him peacefully. Those type of things are, they're disgusting and disheartening to me as a minority male, having, friends, family members, colleagues, whomever, just being a human, seeing this happen and seeing people treated this way. But I think it goes right back to everything that John said. It's all about, changing the narrative and helping to shift the way people think at home, and then also having more folks from the community dealing with folks from their community.
And
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
There's this kid in Yonkers. He's got this thing called Stop and Shake, right? Where he got the police force and he got the community to, when you see a police officer, stop and shake their hand, right? And it was a way to just break down that barrier of us versus them. I got kicked out of my house when I was 17. I spent a lot of time in the streets rebelling, and in that environment, it was still an us versus them environment when you saw a police officer. And I carried the baggage of, if I got pulled over by one officer that liked my father, it was good. If I got pulled over by another officer that did not like my father, it was a long night, and, that us versus them mentality, that needs to diffuse, and it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of diligent effort from both sides, because there are incredible police officers out there. The majority of police officers are incredibly good people, but good people can be stuck in bad systems and forced to go along with bad things. You got to think about this, right? We're all entrepreneurs here. So if we lose a job, we are like, whatever, I'll go sell something. I'll go build something. I'll go do this. I'll go do that. Other people have their whole entire families in their minds when they think about, if I speak out, I'm going to lose my job. If I speak out, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose that. They have their benefits. They have their family. They have their kids in their mind. They have all of that in their mind. They're like, man, I'm only 5 years from retirement. I just got to make it 5 more years. These are things that we have to think about that factor into why some people stay quiet. Do I believe that is a legitimate excuse to stay quiet? No, I think you should call out wrong when it's wrong, no matter what it does to you in your financial and personal life. You should do it. But we have to come from an understanding. If we as this diverse group of people want to be understood, we have to come from a place of understanding as well. And we got to understand that they may not understand the stuff that we go through as a diverse group, but we got to understand that we don't understand some of the pressures that they go through. And when you come from a place of understanding, then there can be communication, dialogue, and progression.
I mean, I can't speak obviously as a white or a black person, but I can speak as an American person. And that's the key word here. I'm an American. Simple as that. I wasn't born in this country, but I love this country more than the country I was born in. This is my country. My fiance is white. I grew up in an 85% Hispanic town. I was the only Taiwanese partner at Deloitte, Mexico at 33. I get it, right? Half my family was born in China and half of my family was born in Taiwan, and they hate each other because of the communism or whatever the heck they're going on. It's just wrong versus right. And the issue is simple. You killing someone because of whatever your reasons is wrong versus right. I'm 6'4", 280. Let me tell you something. If I am, as a Chinese man, if I'm standing over someone who's 5'6" and an officer pulls up, they're going to come to me first because it's happened to me several times. I'm just bigger. I'm scarier. I've been pulled over by officers in Oklahoma with a Hispanic friend driving our car for no reason, I had nunchucks in the car. I was coming back from a tournament. I kept my mouth shut. I did what I had to do. I didn't give him a reason. He searched. He did what he had to do. Didn't pretend I was doing anything else. I literally didn't want to put myself in a situation that didn't work. I've been pulled over with a friend who's black. I had a gun in my car. He literally looked at me when I said I got in my car. I got pulled over, and he's like, "I'm going to run." I didn't understand why he wanted to do that, and I told him, "What are you trying to do?" He was generally that afraid, and me as an Asian, I didn't understand it. What do you mean you want to run? That's going to make it worse. At the end of the day, it's wrong versus right, and what ends up happening is we allow other people to classify it. One man killed another man. It's that simple. It was wrong. The other two men that were watching were wrong. The other man that was watching that was Asian was wrong. The people that were recording and break it off was wrong. And nobody broke it off because they were afraid that it was going to happen to them. That simple. I ask myself that question every day. If I was the one sitting there, would I have ran over and knocked over that officer? I don't know the answer. I would like to sit there and say, yeah, I would have absolutely done that. But I have really a 6'4", 280-pound Chinese guy charging towards an officer to knock him down. What am I doing? It's wrong versus right. And what ends up happening is most people, that's what the other people allow the classification, not us. That's when they say it's a black man was murdered by a white man. A white man was murdered by a black man. What about you just a man murdered another man? It was wrong. We're allowing ourselves to be perpetuated and let the higher powers mess with us. We're allowing that to happen, and we shouldn't. It's wrong. It's completely wrong. In the issue, yes, hundreds of years of issues. Everyone feels a certain which way. Everyone is not happy. Even now, I promise you this, I'll say it straightforward. Out of everyone that's sitting here in this panel, I guarantee you when people see John, they're like, what does John have right to say? Because he's white. It's the same thing, but John has as much value as the rest of us do. And we have to really recognize that. It's just right versus wrong, and it's wrong. But we should also know that if I am stuck in a position as a man who looks Asian and I'm walking in any neighborhood, I am very careful of my mouth and what I'm saying because I know my size is already intimidating. I know the stereotype that people think I know martial arts, and I already am very self-aware that I'm not going to put myself in that position. We have to be self-aware of it. We represent our own races, whether we like it or not. Let's give the best representation of it. And the guys who are out there who are the most horrible human beings in this world that will kill any single one of us, they don't represent Americans. They don't represent the white or the black or the Asian. They represent bad human beings. Simple as that.
All right, I want to segue into this question after that statement. At what point do your values with racism outweigh and alter your plans for success? So like at what point do you put your foot down with racism, even if it affects your reputation? So something that you just touched on, you were like, would I have stepped in? Like, would I have went over there and, did something? At what point does one values kind of outweigh a person's plans for success?
I want to jump in because I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. I was at a I didn't want to say which company it is, but I'll say this. I was at a China Mexico Expo, and I was one of the keynote speakers speaking. And the company that I was working with was sitting there. And we're at the expo, these different countries coming in. And we're going to take a photo. And all these higher ups are sitting next to me. So we're going to take a photo. They all did this. Every single one of them. And I looked over, and I was so shocked at that point in time. And what I realized is they didn't know any better. So I said to them, hey, this is wrong. That's how your eyes look. I said, if someone has one leg, you don't hop around one leg, right? They said, no, that's the problem. You don't know better. They never did it again. They apologized. They moved forward. They respected me. I was the only person of my race in the history of that firm sitting there. And that happened at a place that you would never think that they would try to pull a racist act because it's an expo full of Asians and Hispanics. And they did that. They didn't know better. And I'm not saying it's right. It's totally wrong. But me, myself, what I did was I educated and I proved to them my race wasn't an issue. I'm just smarter than you guys. And therefore, I'm going to make it happen. And that's how I became a partner. It's not fun. It's not right. It sucks. But the moment you allow them to throw that negativity to bring you back is the moment that they won. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to prove you wrong on every step of the way. I'm going to do it right in a very positive manner. So when they say, hey, my friend, a Chinese person that I know, do you happen to know this person? They're talking to some Vietnamese person. At the bare minimum, I'll tell you this much. They got nothing bad to say about me because I'm representing myself the best that I can as a human being. And that's unfortunately for people, that's how they're going to assimilate it. But I'm not going to allow them to sit there. If they're going to assimilate that, destroy my whole entire race and everything that we are, just to fill in and play into their hands of evil and wrong. And that's what happened to me.
So let me get this right. You were basically rewarded for doing the right thing.
I wasn't rewarded for anything. I just rewarded myself for doing the right thing because I had to teach them so they didn't know because they didn't know better. They legitimately didn't know better, right? Because they asked, well, what do you mean? What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
And then I didn't assume that they did. And then I outperformed them and rewarded myself. And so those same guys that did that same thing later, now I'm your partner, brother. Simple as that.
I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive, Josh. I don't think that standing up against, oppression, racist acts like David Chen had to stand up for necessarily is going to interfere or impact your success. I do believe, and we've all probably done it, where we've had to bite our tongue and pick our battles. For me, where I draw the line, and I've been in similar situations with David Chen, walking into the courthouse with a white client, and they automatically assume that I'm the defendant and my client's the lawyer, right? Those type of things, it hurts, right? But I know getting into that battle at that moment is not going to move the needle for me in any way. But for me, where I draw the line is if I allow someone to do something to me, someone that has a voice, someone that is empowered, and I don't say anything, then I know it's exponentially going to affect a lot more people down the line, right? So when things get to the level where it's going to be a big problem for people where I can't control it and I'm not around, I'll say something at any expense, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm standing up for what's right and what I believe in. And if somebody doesn't want to do business with me because of that, so what, right? There's a 1,000 other people that do want to do business with me because I'm a good person. I'm doing things genuine and positive, right? And the bigot that doesn't want to do business with me because he's a racist and he wants to continue being a racist and his feelings are hurt because I called him out on it, then I don't need that person anyway, right?
I hear you.
I totally agree. I think it's values and then success. If that has to be compromised, then it's not worth it.
Agreed.
It's quicker and better. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Sorry. All right. Here we go. Okay, so how can we come together as a culture and be open to other races? This is more of a, actually, let me rephrase this question. How can businesses come together and be open to other races?
I don't know how to take that question and bring it into business, because even companies that are racist, they still want they want your money anyway. They don't care what color you are, they want your money, so they can pretend not to be racist, all along. Like whenever there's if you look at just the media right now and you look at the the way that the companies are acting, after this whole George Floyd tragedy, it's like black people just started to exist to them. They're just, oh, everything's Black Lives Matter, everything's this, everything, we got your back, black people, and blah blah. It's like, yo, where you guys been at? For where you guys been? If you're smart and you see it through the eyes, you could look at it through two ways. I mean, it's good that they're doing it because even if it's disingenuous, it's bringing attention to the cause. But also, is it genuine? You know what I mean? Like money's money for them. They want money. When you're talking big corporations, they want money. So how do you bridge the gap? I don't know. I truly believe it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier. Is it starting in home, and when those children and when we have our bigger companies than we currently have right now. When our kids grow up and start companies, and they're the ones that'll change that culture. And it sucks to say this, but the older mindset has to die. Like it has to die away. These ideals, these ideas, these systems, they have to be taken over by people who don't hold those ideals and systems at the same value as others do. Now, yes, are those people going to bring, their mindset? Are they going to instill that mindset into their kids and into the next generation that they're breeding? Yes. And are those kids going to grow up and take over those companies? Yes. But, we're all smart. We're all sharp people here. We're going to raise sharp people, and those kids can go up and create companies that'll outweigh, the ones that are there. So I believe that it still goes back to it being the individual and in the home, and, just praying and working towards the future. I think that right now we're not going to like slap a CEO and be like, hey, stop being racist, my guy. It's good for business. It's just not going to happen. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And, it sucks that a tragedy, and not only this tragedy, but, every single event that looks so similar to the George Floyd event leading up to this, it sucks that it takes death of a human being to cause this type of conversation. But I am glad that the conversation is happening, and I'm glad that it's happening in the way that it's happening, not only with people like you guys that are on here that are willing to, step up and say something, but, as a whole, even if people are in disagreement, I'm glad that the conversation is happening.
I think consumers are also putting, their money where their mouth is, and they're supporting companies that have been supportive since the beginning of time, versus not supporting companies that have clearly shown that they don't care about Black people, whether that's through representation in their C-suite or through their actions, right? So I think that more and more consumers are showing that they care, that the companies care, and we are going to continue to see that as we move forward.
Yeah, I like what you said, John, earlier about cultural training. I think that would be a huge asset to companies, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. Because when it comes down to being relatable, this is something that you touched on, David, and I want to talk to you about this. Like that's a super cool case study that I would love to definitely review, in terms of the cop who had no idea what it's like to come from that area and what that person was going through, and just robbed a couple of days ago. Most people in those corporations are in that bubble and don't understand different cultures. So I think cultural training was you hit it right on the head earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to this question next, man. Is racism the same for men and women? And if not, how is it different? This could be this could be just like answered in like a quick synopsis, because I want to get through a couple more questions.
Yeah, I think in a broad stroke, it's the same, right? Your perception's always going to be different. Male and female is another, obviously it's biological, but also another social construct. If we're dealing with a minority female who's, George Floyd's daughter, or his mom, who we know is deceased, or then we're dealing with a Breonna Taylor, for example, who was actually murdered. I think it can affect you all the same, just like your mother, father, brother, daughter, sister, was murdered. It depends on your vantage point, right? But to me, it's a tough question to answer, I guess, because I only can speak from my perspective, being a male. But I would imagine that it is the same. I know there are, there's been comments online that I've seen that protect Black men, and then I've seen some women changing the narrative. Well, what about Black women? And I think the folks that are writing about protect Black men are just basing things on statistics, right? Like we got into statistical conversation earlier. But to say if Trayvon Martin gets murdered or Eric Garner gets murdered, that it doesn't affect minority women, then that's a ridiculous statement, because those people have families,
I agree, but I also think that Black women in particular are having to fight so many battles, whether that's sexism in the workplace, to racism in the workplace or whatever that looks like, even in entrepreneurship, like we have historically seen that Black women get less for doing more. And so I think that it is unequal. And I think that being a minority, specifically a Black woman, is a lot tougher in every aspect because of the constant fights that they're having to face on top of the racism in America.
I'd like to chime in on this. Being an Asian American who is dating a very beautiful white woman, let me tell you what happened on my 40th birthday when she put a photo up. So when some troll put, this guy looks like he eats bats. And the only reason you're with him is because he has money. If the roles were reversed and it was an Asian woman with a white man, it would have been a high five. That's the world we live in. That's reality. But I want to say something that's true. If me and my fiance are having these problems in the US, we're still having the same problems around the world. We literally will sit at a ticket counter next to each other, my whole entire family in Dubai. She's standing right next to me and they'll talk to us and they'll say, how can I help you? She's like, I'm with them. That same thing happens in Asia. We're walking in Asia and we have Asian women pointing and laughing because they can't understand what's going on. It happens everywhere. It's not just here. And I'm not sitting there saying it's right. It's completely wrong. But you know what? You want to talk about the worst, like, you know, to your point earlier about Black women. If you look at any of these historical dating apps, Asian men and Black women are the lowest in the totem pole of acceptance and love and success rates. We have the worst stereotypes as men. We really do. I'll tell you that for a fact. We have the worst. And you already know what stereotypes I'm already saying without me even saying it. It's already in everyone's head. It's not easy to date someone of a different race. I've dated people of many, many races. But you know what? It all comes down to if you allow them to do that towards you and going from there and really use that as towards your advantage, not towards your advantage. And that's just the reality of it. But when I point out, and I want to point this out, it's wrong and it's right. But I want to know it's literally, we'll sit at an Asian market and the cashier will sit there and look at us, talk to us, and look at her and go, how can I help you? It happens all the time. So do I get upset and get mad at the trolls and go blast them and get upset? Or do I sit there and say, she's with me because she's with me for me? Right? It happens to all of us. So yes, there is an issue with males and females, but I'll tell you what, out of all the males in the totem pole of race, Asian men have the most success rate with Black women right down there. On Tinder, on Match.com, on eHarmony, we're the least wanted sets of group. So it's not just male versus female, it comes down to the individual race as well.
How do we overcome these systematic or systemic barriers of racism in corporate or just in everyday life? A lot of people, have lost their jobs and the world is on fire, what some may say. But how do we overcome just that systemic racism that has been ingrained in America for years, or in the world for that matter? We can make it a more worldwide thing. In the world, how do we come together and unify, given the circumstances?
I think one powerful way, one thing that's been used historically to push any message is going to be mediums, whether it's print or television. Historically, but that's been a way to kind of shape a narrative. When they were putting little kids on cigarette ads, or on Coca-Cola ads to get them to drink Coke back in the day. If you look at it that way, and bring it into common time, into modern times, we have Kyrie Irving, going out on a limb, and this may be unpopular, especially coming from me being a sports agent as well, and saying, we shouldn't play basketball until things change in the earth. Things change in the U.S. with race relations, and a lot of people attacked him and said, well, you've got a bunch of money, you're not genuine. Just go, shut up and dribble, essentially, right? And when I hear him say that, I really think about it. He's on to something for a number of reasons, and I'll tell you why. And this is one of the first steps we can take towards making a change. Everybody touched on it in different ways throughout this dialogue we've been having. First, you got to hit them in the pockets, right? So we've got these corporate companies. We've got Nike. We've got Chase. We've got BOA that said that they're donating their money to, Black Lives Matter causes or, equal justice causes. And guess what? Those same companies pay millions of dollars to LeBron and Kyrie in marketing dollars. Now, if these players, being minorities, being, across the world, global superstars as a basketball player, some people in other countries may be the only, Black person they've ever seen or know, right? They don't physically know them, but they know of. Now, if they're using their voice, and now you've got companies that have already gone on the record and said that I support this. If Kyrie and LeBron say, guess what, there's no NBA this year, then Nike and all these other companies will have to fall right in line. If not, they're going to take a massive PR hit from going on the record and saying that they're behind us to begin with. So to go back to what John said, it's a financial thing, but then it's also the media. So the same way our president shifted the narrative about the kneeling with Colin Kaepernick in 2017. And I don't care what side of the fence you are on that, but if you're just looking at it and you actually can read through the tea leaves, it wasn't bad until Trump went on television and said, any SOB that kneels is against America. Then all of a sudden, that was it, right? You can easily change the narrative through the media. So if they stand clad and they're willing to sacrifice, quote unquote, their season, they've got, most of them are secure. I don't want to hear that, the bottom class of the NBA, because the bottom class of the NBA is making more money than most people anyway. If they stand pat on that, they can really move the ball forward. I don't think it's going to ever fully be a utopian society. I mean, I think we'd be dumb to think that, because if we fix one issue, there's going to be another one, right? Today it might be, Black Lives Matter. Tomorrow it might be, Asian Lives Matter. We don't know. But I do think the media and finance is two different ways that we can look at really shifting the narrative and affecting people in their pockets. Everybody wants security, right? That's why most people are in this country. So if you being a bigot is going to be consistent with you not being able to provide for your family, guess what? You're going to start changing your views real fast.
By the way, guys, I'm going to edit that out.
You guys. The question was just how do we overcome these systemic barriers in this corporate society?
I think you have to work through implicit bias and train against that. A lot of times the bias is what's stopping you from from making changes in your C-suite, from hiring people who are qualified, and from making your company look like America does. And that starts with the way that you think and the way that society has trained us to think. And if we work through that implicit bias, and that starts in the homes, like we were talking about earlier, then we're actually going to see a change in the way that companies run, and then the way that we approach these situations in the future.
All right, I only have a couple more questions, so 2 more questions to be exact. Where was the Black Lives Matter question at? Here it is. Okay. What is your take on what now some believe to be a political stunt, the Black Lives Matter movement? And I heard you touched on this a little bit earlier, John, and it made me think about it. Like, even though, like you said, it may not be authentic or genuine, they still are, it's still raising awareness. But what are you guys' take on outside of that? What is your take on it?
I would say, going back to exactly what you said, I believe that the hashtag, I believe that, I have not studied the actual entity of, the core, the leadership, or any of that in Black Lives Matter. So I cannot comment on it, within that context. But I can say that just from my experience and seeing how my friends and family have reacted just to the Black Lives Matter statement, like that statement in itself, aside from the movement, with leadership and organization and all of that, I can't comment on that. But what I can comment on is that statement, Black Lives Matter. It's a powerful statement. And, there was something that I saw, said, for all you people who are upset at Black Lives Matter and all you're saying is all lives matter, then why aren't you so upset? Then why aren't you just as upset as everyone else is about George Floyd if all lives truly matter, you know? And so I think that the Black Lives Matter, just that slogan itself, like I said, I can't speak on the organization because I don't know enough about it, but I think that slogan itself and the hashtag and the, you know, that statement is important because yes, all lives do matter, but we're talking about this right now. You know, we are talking about Black lives being affected, and that's why that statement is so important and so powerful right now. So that's my take on it.
I love the analogy that I've heard a number of times throughout this over the last few years. You don't go to a breast cancer awareness, a cancer walk and say all cancers matter, right? It's just what the cause that's important at the moment is, right? And I think, again, I agree with you. If you're saying all lives matter, then you're implicitly implying that you care about other humans. So you should be in support of Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, et cetera. But at the moment, this is a group that's been oppressed systemically, for hundreds of years. And we're trying to get them to a place where, they can feel comfortable and confident in the country. I'm a man in his 30s that has worked as a prosecutor, accomplished a number of things in life. But guess what? Every time to this day, when I'm driving down the road, I can be with anyone. I can be with a colleague and I see a police light on, my heart automatically drops. I have a pit in my stomach. And that's a feeling that a lot of people can't relate to. And I feel like, it's going to affect me long term because my heart rate goes way up. I don't know what's going to happen. And there's times when they just drive past me and I'm like, right. And that's something that no one can relate to until they're in their shoes. So until, folks like me don't feel that feeling, then it's always going to be relevant. But that doesn't mean that anybody else's life matters any less right now because we're trying to help one group out.
We'll end with this question right here. It's a question I like to ask all panelists at the end of each panel, and it's, how do you want to electrify the world before you leave this earth? And that's just, playing off of our name, which is Bolt. And something that we do is obviously bring, diverse panels together to help bridge that gap between culture and corporate. And that's how I want to electrify the world or this earth before I leave. So I want to ask each and every one of you guys. We get to start with John and just kind of go down. I don't know how it's shaped on you guys' screen. Actually, we'll start with Neha, women first. And then, whoever wants to jump in can jump in after that.
Let's open up some time. I want to electrify the earth by making my ethics come to life with every action that I take. I'm vegan because I care about the animals. I'm zero waste because I care about the environment. And I think that every action that I take needs to make as positive or neutral of an impact on the planet as I can. And so I want to continue to electrifying the planet by educating others and making my ethics my actions.
You got the men scared to go, man. That answer was just too swift and perfect. you got Nadim over there scared. He's like,
I mean, I don't know. You said like in a pattern. I don't know what pattern we were going to, but
yeah, I didn't. Everyone had the same pattern. That's why I was like,
Yeah. So I'll go next since you already called on me. So even though I didn't get to think through it, but just generally, I know from as a child to now, my goal has always been, to me, it's not the extent of the life, but it's the quality of life that's within that life. So I want to make quality of life better for people. I mean, we are all here we exist. We're born and we die, but in between that, what we can do to make other people's lives better, that's important to me. I've grown up to think money makes that life better, so I'm focusing on business and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But but yeah, so it's really just try to make people's lives better when you're here, not just to exist and to eat and die, right? So
Guess I'll hop on right now. But first off, before I even just say anything, I want to say how grateful I am for the opportunity to be on here with you incredible individuals. I've learned, I've appreciated, I've you know, everything that was said here. You know, I was taking notes and everything, and platforms like this, I feel, are what's gonna electrify the world, as you would say. You know, getting stuff together like this, getting people from different backgrounds, different trains of thoughts, you know, all of that is it's so important. And you know, I'm truly appreciative of every single one of you for taking your time out, sharing your perspectives, and you know, just being here in this time. I'm truly blessed from it. You know, I'm gonna say a prayer for all of you tonight. But as far as me wanting to electrify the world, I don't personally want to do it. I want to empower other people to electrify the world. You know, I have a passion for God, a passion for philanthropy, a passion for travel, a passion for business. I have a passion for all of that stuff. But through that stuff, I just want to find other people who have dreams, who have goals, who have aspirations, who want to make changes in the world. And as long as their values are aligned with my values, I want to empower them to go out and do that, to go be creators, as your shirt says, Josh, you know, to go make change in the world. And I really don't need any of the attention. I don't need any of the, you know, I'm going to go out and do this, you know, because at the end of the day, as far as I believe, it's all glory to God anyway. You know, I don't really have much to do with it. I'm just an instrument. So as far as electrifying the world, I just want to empower other people to go and make a dent in this universe that outlives them. You know, I don't want it to die with us. I want it to outlive us, the things that we do. You know, what are you doing today that's going to outlive you? And you know, that's how I would say want to electrify the world. So thank you guys again so much for allowing me to be on here and to share with you guys.
It's up to me and you, Dave. You want to go or you want me to go?
I tagged you, man. It's your turn first.
That's good. I saw you were writing stuff down. I was like, oh, he's about to drop some bombs. I don't want to go after that anyway. But yeah, I share in everything that you just said, John, from your gratitude for the panelists and Josh for putting this together into your message of empowerment. I think that's extremely important. One of my good friends and mentors, David Meltzer's mission in life is to make, you know, empower others to make the world a happier and better place. And I think that's a simple way to say, you know, live your life with purpose. Try to be, you know, to people as you want them to be to you, right? We taught these lessons as children. If we can actually try to, you know, do these things on a daily basis, I think Neha, from everything that she said in terms of what her values are, everything she does aligns with her values. She's a vegan because she has a value system that tells her why she wants to be a vegan. It's consistent with who she actually is. Now, if all of us did that, if we try to actually live in a way where we're trying to spread positivity and be the best version of ourselves, and guess what? The world will be better for everyone. The other thing I'll say in terms of electrifying the earth, it's about leaving a legacy of positivity. If I can be a good human that raises other good humans, that then raises other good humans, and then sprinkle some love throughout the world, then I've done my job while I'm here.
That was really good. Y'all really good. And again, thank you everyone's time, because obviously I think when we came on this, everyone's probably very nervous and like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And what are people going to say? And Josh, I just want to tell you, you know, thank you for stepping it up and putting us all together. It couldn't have been easy for you and your team as well. So we want to thank you for that. You're definitely making the impact. And I think for us, it's simple. I mean, we have to break the cycle. Everything bad we've learned, everything we've seen from our parents, everything we've seen from our grandparents, everything that's happened, it's so easy to use that as an excuse for why you can fail and why things aren't going to work and why you were given a situation that you're in. But it's your opportunity, your ability to break that cycle and to be better, to prove that to the next generation they don't have to be like that, to educate them and give them purpose and meaningful blessings in life, and to appreciate your perspective of what you have. If you can't appreciate your perspective of what you have, let's face it, all of us in this country are way better than most of the people in many, many other countries. That's just the reality of the situation. And we tend to not understand that we have a better and good perspective. If you can break the cycle and be better, and you can show other people who are going to relate to you based on your own race, because that's what it comes down to, right? Or your own beliefs, that you can be better and you can show them that you're there, then you've already created a form of legacy. Start having meaningful impacts. And for me, if anything happens, is at the end of the day, I just want to be kind to people. If I'm kind to someone and they're in a good mood and they're kind to someone else and that person's in a good mood, eventually everyone's going to pay it forward. Do I expect to change the world by being kind to everybody? No. But man, I definitely expect to make it better. So break the cycle and be better. It's so easy to be negative and use all the excuses not to work. It's very hard to look at yourself and check your ego and realize a lot of the things are your fault and a lot of things are your are doings. It's not your fault you were born in this situation, but it will be completely your fault if you die in the situation. And I like pizza, so I'm done.
Lovely answers. I appreciate all of you guys for joining this panel. Make sure you guys keep in contact. Like, this is a good way to network, build relationships outside of the network you have. Keep in contact with each other. I know that I will keep in contact with you guys. You guys will be getting a thank you card from us as well. That's why we asked for you guys' address. And if you guys ever have any questions or interested in ever joining a panel, don't hesitate to reach out. But yeah, we're gonna be doing some dope things here in Dallas, and continuing doing what we're doing and making impact. So I appreciate you guys. Jordan at Microsoft, I appreciate you. Oh, there he goes, popped up on there.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Listening and loving it.
And learning, you gotta take it back to the corporate. But yeah, appreciate you guys. And yeah, we'll be in touch.